Take a slow breath in and let it go. Let your body settle where it is. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands rest. Let the weight of the day, whatever it contained, begin to fall away from you, quietly, without needing to be dismissed, without needing to be named. You are here now, somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, at the edge of sleep, listening to a voice that has nothing to ask of you and nowhere to take you in a hurry. Tonight, we are going to tell a story, a long story, a slow one, a story that begins in a shipyard in Belfast more than 100 years ago and ends 4 kilometers below the surface of the North Atlantic, in water so cold and so dark that time itself seems to have slowed down. It is the story of a ship that was meant to be the greatest ever built, a ship that was meant to be unsinkable, a ship that carried on its first and only voyage more than 2,200 people and the hopes and ambitions of an entire age. You already know its name, Titanic. But we are not going to hurry to the ending tonight. We are going to take our time. There is a great deal to know about the Titanic before the iceberg, before the sinking, before the cold water and the dark. There is the ship itself, the steel and rivets and engines, the enormous effort that went into building her. There is the world she was built for, a world of certainty, of progress, of belief in the power of engineering and the supremacy of machines. There is the ocean she was meant to cross, the cold, vast North Atlantic, which had been crossed thousands of times before and was considered in the spring of 1912 almost routine. Almost. The ocean, as we have seen before on this channel, is never quite routine. It always keeps something in reserve. Tonight, in this first part of our journey, we are going to stay on land. We are going to walk slowly, in our imagination, through the shipyard where the Titanic was built. We are going to watch her grow from a drawing on paper into one of the largest moving objects that had ever been made by human hands. We are going to meet the men who designed her, the men who built her, the world she was made for. There is no iceberg in this part. There is no sinking. There is only the ship being dreamed, being drawn, being built, rising slowly over 3 years from an empty slip of ground beside the River Lagan into a structure so large that people who stood beside her could not quite believe what they were seeing. Let your breathing slow. Let the story begin. There is no hurry. The city is Belfast. The year is 1907. It is summer. The days are long in the north of Ireland at that time of year. The sun does not fully set until nearly 11 at night, and the long blue summer twilight stretches on for hours after that. In a private dining room at the London house of Lord Pirrie, the chairman of the shipbuilding firm Harland and Wolff, 2 men are having dinner. One of them is Lord Pirrie himself, a shipbuilder, a man who has spent his entire working life in the yards of Belfast, who has watched the industry grow from small wooden vessels to steel leviathans. The other man is J. Bruce Ismay. He is the chairman of the White Star Line, one of the largest passenger shipping companies in the world. His company owns a fleet of ocean liners that cross the North Atlantic on regular schedules, carrying passengers and mail and cargo between Europe and America. The White Star Line is in competition, a fierce competition, a rivalry that has been going on for decades between a handful of companies that dominate the transatlantic trade: Cunard, the Hamburg America line, the North German Lloyd, and White Star, each one trying to build faster ships, larger ships, more luxurious ships than the others, each one trying to attract the wealthy passengers who would pay enormous sums for a first-class cabin on a ship that was known for its speed or its elegance, each one trying in its own way to claim the prize of being the greatest shipping line in the world. Cunard has just launched 2 new ships. Now they are called the Lusitania and the Mauretania. They are the largest and fastest ships in the world. They have won between them the Blue Riband, the unofficial prize awarded to the fastest ship crossing the Atlantic. Ismay cannot match that speed, not easily, not without enormous expense, but he can build something else, something larger, more luxurious, more comfortable. A ship whose appeal is not that it crosses the ocean faster, but that it crosses the ocean more beautifully. A floating hotel, a palace at sea. Over dinner that evening, Ismay and Piri sketch out the idea. Not just one ship, 3. A class of 3 enormous sister ships, each larger than anything yet built, each designed to carry first-class passengers across the Atlantic in conditions of comfort and elegance that no previous ship had matched. The class will have a name, the Olympic class, and the 3 ships will be called Olympic, Titanic, and Gigantic, names drawn from Greek mythology, from the race of giants that ruled the world before the gods. The names are not subtle. They are meant to suggest scale, power, the great, unchallengeable stature of the ships themselves, titans, Olympians, gigantic beings striding across the ocean. Ismay and Piri shake hands at the end of the dinner. The decision is made. The ships will be built. Breathe slowly, in and out. This is how things begin, over a dinner in a private dining room. 2 men with sufficient resources and sufficient ambition to decide that the largest moving objects ever built by human beings should, in fact, be built. And then built. Let that simplicity settle for a moment. And there is something almost dreamlike about it, the way enormous things begin with small conversations, the way a ship that will come to define an entire age is first imagined in an ordinary room over an ordinary meal. No machinery yet, no steel, no workers, only 2 men, an idea and a handshake. The shipyard is called Harland and Wolff. It sits on Queen's Island at the mouth of the River Ligan in the harbour of Belfast. The island is not, in truth, an island. It is a low, flat piece of reclaimed land built up from the silt and mud dredged out of the harbour over the 19th century. By 1907 it is covered with slipways, cranes, sheds, fitting out basins, the whole apparatus of a shipbuilding yard operating at industrial scale. Harland and Wolff is, at this moment, one of the largest shipyards in the world. It employs roughly 15,000 men. It builds ships of every size, from small coastal steamers to some of the largest ocean liners afloat. It has a long and successful partnership with the White Star Line, and it will be trusted with the building of all 3 ships of the new Olympic class. But the yard as it stands cannot build ships as large as the ones Ismay and Piri have imagined. It simply does not have the space. Before the Titanic can be built, the shipyard itself must be rebuilt. 2 existing slipways are torn out. In their place, 3 new slipways are built, larger than any that have existed before, strengthened with deeper pilings and thicker concrete to support the weight of the new ships. Above the slipways, a vast new gantry is constructed, a framework of steel. 22 stories high, feel large enough to straddle two of the new ships at once, carrying the cranes and the walkways and the hoisting equipment needed to assemble them. It is the largest shipbuilding gantry in the world, visible from across the harbour, from across the city, from ships passing offshore, a skeletal tower of steel rising above the low industrial landscape of Queen's Island. Under that gantry, the Titanic will be built. There is a drawing room inside the shipyard, a long, high-ceilinged room filled with drafting tables and the smell of pencil, lead and paper. The walls are covered with blueprints hung in long rolls from hooks. The light comes from high windows along the north wall, soft, even northern light, the kind that draftsmen have always preferred because it does not throw strong shadows across the paper. Here, the Titanic begins, not as steel, not yet as lines on paper. The chief designer is a man named Thomas Andrews. He is a nephew of Lord Pirrie, which is how he came to work at the yard in the first place, but he has earned his position through decades of patient work. He started as a teenager, as a premium apprentice, sweeping floors and fetching tools for the senior draftsman. He is now, in 1907, the managing director of the design department. He is 34 years old. Thomas Andrews is, by all accounts, a quiet man, serious, deeply knowledgeable about every aspect of shipbuilding. He walks through the yard each day, speaking with the workers, inspecting the progress of every ship under construction, making small notes in a notebook he carries in his pocket. He is respected by the men, not feared, respected. Over the next 3 years, he will walk the decks of the Titanic more times than anyone else alive. He will know every compartment, every bulkhead, every pipe and cable and rivet. He will, in a very real sense, be the man who knows the ship better than any other human being. He will sail with her on her maiden voyage. He will not survive it, but we are not there yet, not tonight. Tonight, he is in the drawing room, in the soft northern light, bent over the drafting table with a pencil in his hand, working on the lines of a ship that does not yet exist. The design takes months. Every part of the ship must be drawn, calculated, specified in detail. The shape of the hull, the arrangement of the decks, the position of the engines, the layout of the cabins, the routing of the steam pipes and the electrical cables and the ventilation shafts. Thousands of drawings, each one produced by hand. No computers, no digital modelling, no shortcuts of any kind. A draftsman working with a pencil and a slide rule, consulting reference books of empirical data, drawing line after line onto paper that has been carefully prepared to hold ink. The hull is drawn first, in profile, the long view from the side showing the full length of the ship from bow to stern. In plan, the view from above showing the width at every point. In cross-section, a series of slices taken every few feet along the length of the ship, showing the shape of the hull at each position. These drawings are called lines drawings. They define the shape of the ship more precisely than any photograph could. From them, every plate of steel, every frame, every rivet hole can be calculated and specified. The dimensions settle slowly. As the drawings progress, 269 meters long, 28 meters wide at her broadest point, 53 meters from the keel to the top of her funnels. Displacement the weight of water she would push aside when fully loaded, over 52,000 tons. These numbers do not mean much in the abstract. Let us try to make them real. 269 meters is the length of 2.5 football pitches laid end to end. 53 meters in height is taller than an 11-story building. 52,000 tons is roughly the weight of 350 blue whales, the largest animals to have ever lived on this planet, packed together into a single hull. She is, at the moment of her design, the largest moving object ever conceived, not by a small margin, by a significant one. Several thousand tons heavier than her closest rivals, 40 meters longer, an entire deck taller, a new thing, on a scale no one had previously dared to attempt. Let your breathing slow. Let your body become heavier. There is something hypnotic about the numbers, the careful accumulation of dimensions, the slow reading of specifications. Let them drift past you without needing to be remembered. Let the scale of the ship settle in your imagination without needing to be measured precisely. A very large ship, larger than anything you have ever seen, being drawn carefully, on paper, in a quiet room in Belfast, 119 years ago. The design has a particular feature that deserves attention. The hull is divided into 16 compartments. These compartments run across the width of the ship, is separated by watertight bulkheads, thick walls of steel that extend from the keel up through the lower decks. Each bulkhead has heavy watertight doors that can be closed by hand or remotely from the bridge in the event of an emergency. The purpose is damage control. If the hull is breached at any point by collision, by grounding, by any accident that lets water into the ship, the flooding is meant to be confined to the compartment where the breach occurs. The watertight doors close. The compartment fills with water. The rest of the ship remains dry. The ship is designed to remain afloat with any 2 compartments fully flooded, even with any 3 compartments flooded, even, in some configurations, with all 4 of the forward compartments flooded at once. No single collision, no conceivable grounding. No credible scenario in the minds of the designers would flood more than that. The ship is, in the language of the time, practically unsinkable. That phrase, practically unsinkable, will be repeated in the years that follow by a great many commentators, newspapers, trade publications, promotional materials from the White Star Line. And, in the telling and retelling, the word practically will slowly fall away. The Titanic will come to be described in the popular imagination as simply unsinkable. A ship that cannot sink, a ship against which the ocean has no power. It is not the designer's fault that this happens. Thomas Andrews and his colleagues never claimed the ship was unsinkable. They claimed, accurately, that she was designed with an unusually high degree of damage resistance, or that she could survive scenarios that would destroy other ships. But the word travels faster than the careful qualifications, and by the time the ship is ready to sail, there is a belief among much of the public and among some of her own crew that she is a ship no ocean can defeat. The ocean will hear that belief. The ocean always hears. And the ocean, as we have seen on this channel before, keeps its own counsel about such things. Breathe slowly. Let the word unsinkable rest in the air for a moment. It is a word that will come back to haunt this story, but it is also, in its way, a beautiful word. a word that captures something essential about the age the Titanic belonged to, an age that believed in engineering, in progress, in the steady, unstoppable advance of human capability over nature. An age that looked at the ocean, which had claimed thousands of ships over thousands of years, and said, "We have solved this. We have built something the ocean cannot reach." It was not an unreasonable belief given what had come before. Shipbuilding had advanced more in the previous 50 years than in the previous 500. Wooden sailing vessels had been replaced by steel steamships. The dangers of the Atlantic had been reduced through engineering to a level that would have seemed miraculous to sailors of an earlier era. It was reasonable to believe the progression would continue. It is always reasonable to believe that progression will continue until something reminds you that it will not. Construction begins on the 31st of March 1909, a Wednesday, a cold, grey morning in Belfast. The slipway is ready, and the gantry stands over it, enormous and skeletal against the northern sky. The keel is laid. This is a ceremonial moment, though there is no particular ceremony attached to it on this occasion, just men working. The first pieces of steel and the flat plates that will form the bottom of the hull are lowered into position on the wooden blocks that line the slipway. They are connected by rivets driven in by steam-powered riveting machines, and where machines cannot reach, by teams of men working with hammers and red-hot iron. The keel is the spine of the ship. Every frame, every plate, every piece of structure will be built up from the keel, rising outward and upward like a great skeleton taking shape. It will take more than 2 years to build the hull, 2 years of riveting, 3 million rivets, each one driven in by hand or by pneumatic hammer, with teams of 4 or 5 men working together. The heater, who kept the rivets glowing red in a small coke furnace, the catcher, who caught the hot rivet in tongs and placed it in the hole, the bucker, who held it in position from one side, the driver, who hammered it flat on the other. 3 million rivets, each one placed, heated, positioned, hammered individually by human hands over 2 years of continuous work. The sound of the yard during those years was the sound of hammers on steel, continuous, rhythmic, coming from every direction at once, a sound so loud that men who worked there for years went partially deaf, a condition known at the time simply as shipyard ear, accepted as an ordinary consequence of the work. And the men themselves were young, mostly in their 20s and 30s, and many of them came from families that had worked at Harland and Wolff for generations, fathers and sons, brothers working side by side on the same scaffolding. A trade passed down. 8 of them died during the construction of the Titanic. Not an unusually high number for a shipyard of that size at that time. Industrial accidents, falls from scaffolding, crushing injuries, burns, the occasional rivet fired by a pneumatic hammer striking a man's eye. The work was dangerous. Everyone who did it knew that. But the work was also, for many of them, the best work they could find. Steady. Well paid by the standards of the time, part of something visibly great, a ship rising slowly into the Belfast sky, is that the whole city could watch growing from week to week. Photographs exist from this period, workers posed in front of the unfinished hull, tiny figures against a wall of riveted steel that stretches out of frame in every direction. Men standing at the top of the gantry, so high above the slipway that they look like birds resting on a cliff face. The propellers, each one the size of a small house, being lowered into position by cranes that strain visibly under the weight. The scale of it is difficult to absorb even now, a century later, looking at the photographs. The ship is too large for the frame. The human figures are too small to explain it. Let your eyes close a little more. Let the rhythmic sound of the shipyard fade into something softer, the hammering of 3 million rivets, one at a time. Hot steel, cold air, the slow, its patient, rhythmic work of building something enormous. Your breathing is slow. The night is quiet around you. The ship is rising, somewhere in the distance, in the long summer twilight of 1910. By the summer of 1910, the hull is finished, a long black curve of steel resting in her slipway, waiting. She has not yet been painted, not fully. Her hull is coated with a primer of red lead against corrosion, with the black paint of her finished livery applied only along the upper portions. She is unfinished in countless ways. No engines yet, no funnels, no interiors, just the bare hull, empty and enormous. But she is ready for the next stage. She must be launched, moved from the slipway into the water, where the rest of her construction will continue. The launch is scheduled for the 31st of May, 1911. It is a clear spring day. The wind is light. More than 100,000 people have gathered along both banks of the River Lagan to watch. Special excursion trains have been run from Dublin and from Liverpool. The crowd stretches for over a mile in each direction, thick on the quaysides, waving handkerchiefs and hats as the hour approaches. Lord Pirrie is there. Bruce Ismay is there. John Pierpont Morgan, the American financier whose conglomerate IMM ultimately owns the White Star Line, is also there. Thomas Andrews is there, somewhere in the crowd of technical men watching the ship he has spent 3 years designing. There is no christening. The White Star Line does not christen its ships. No bottle is broken against the bow. No prayers are said. The launch is, by company tradition, a purely practical event. The transfer of the hull from land to water, nothing more. At 12 minutes past noon, a red rocket is fired, a signal. The launch is about to begin. Below the hull in the slipway, men are knocking away the wooden shores that have held the ship in position for more than 2 years. One by one, they are removed. The hull begins to rest on only the sliding ways, long, greased tracks of wood that will carry her down into the water. At 5 minutes past 12, a second rocket is fired. The final triggers are released. For a long moment, nothing happens. The ship, all 26,000 tons of her empty hull, sits still in the slipway, as if considering whether to move. Then, slowly, she begins to slide forward toward the water, gathering speed. The crowd falls quiet. The only sound is the immense, grinding roar of the waves, the shriek of 26,000 tons of steel moving across greased wood, accelerating down the slipway toward the River Lagan. It takes 62 seconds from the moment she began to move until her stern entered the water. 62 seconds for the largest hull ever launched to slide from the slipway into the river. There is a vast spray of water as she enters. A wave travels across the river and breaks against the far bank, wetting the feet of spectators who have not moved back in time. Drag chains and enormous iron links attached to the hull rattle loose and slow her momentum, stopping her before she can drift too far. She floats. The crowd cheers. The Titanic is in the water for the first time. Let that image be with you now. A great black hull floating in a river, on a clear spring day, empty, unfinished, but afloat. For the first time in her existence, supported by the water she was built to travel across. She is not yet a ship, not yet. She is a hull, a long, beautiful, carefully shaped shell of steel, with no interior, no engines, no purpose beyond floating. But she is on the water now. And the water is where she will remain for the rest of her existence. For the rest of her existence, which, though no one knows it on this day, will be rather brief. The fitting out takes another 10 months. The hull is towed from the slipway to a deep water wharf on the other side of the yard, the Thompson graving dock, a massive dry dock built specifically to accommodate the Olympic-class ships. Here, the engines are installed, the funnels are raised, the interiors are built. The engines deserve their own moment of attention. The Titanic has 3 propulsion engines, 2 enormous reciprocating steam engines, each one 4 stories tall, driving the outer propellers, and 1 lower pressure turbine engine driving the central propeller. The reciprocating engines are among the largest ever built. Each one weighs 1,000 tons. Each one contains 4 cylinders with pistons that rise and fall in slow, enormous strokes, 96 inches in diameter, with crankshafts that must be forged in one piece by specialist steelmakers. Steam for the engines comes from 29 boilers, arranged in 6 boiler rooms along the length of the ship. Each boiler is roughly the size of a small house. Each one is coal-fired, fed by stokers working continuously in the furnace rooms, shoveling coal from the bunkers into the fire doors at a rate that will consume 600 tons of coal per day at cruising speed. 600 tons of coal per day. The Titanic, to cross the Atlantic, will burn the equivalent of roughly 4,300 tons of coal in total. That coal has to be loaded before she leaves port. It has to be shoveled continuously for 6 days and nights by teams of stokers working in 4-hour shifts in temperatures that often exceed 40 degrees Celsius in the firing spaces. The work of stoking is brutal. It is paid well by the standards of the time, but few men want to do it. The stokers are a distinct class of men on any ocean liner, often tattooed, often with faces permanently blackened by coal dust, speaking their own slang, living in their own quarters deep in the ship. They are the men who move the ship across the ocean, whose invisible labour converts coal into heat, into steam, into motion. Without them, the Titanic cannot move. Without them, she is simply a large, beautiful object, floating still in the water. Above the engines, above the boilers, above the coal bunkers and the stokers, the interiors are being built. This is where the Titanic becomes something more than a machine. The first-class areas are designed to resemble the finest hotels in the world. Not a ship at all. Not in the usual sense. A floating palace with rooms that would not have looked out of place in the Ritz in London or the Waldorf Astoria in New York. There is a grand staircase, a sweeping carved oak staircase, lit from above by a wrought iron and glass dome. See, descending through 6 decks of the ship from the boat deck down to the D deck. Its centerpiece is a carved clock, flanked by 2 allegorical figures representing honor and glory, crowning time. The first-class dining saloon is one of the largest rooms ever built afloat. It can seat 554 passengers at once under electric chandeliers at tables set with Royal Crown Derby china and crystal glassware. There is a Turkish bath, a swimming pool, one of the first ever installed on a passenger ship, a squash court, a gymnasium with electric camels and rowing machines, a café parisien decorated to resemble a Paris street cafe with ivy climbing the walls and wicker chairs. The first-class cabins are spacious, carpeted, panelled in mahogany and oak. But the most expensive suites, the 2 parlour suites on the bridge deck, include private promenade decks, drawing rooms, multiple bedrooms, servants' quarters. A single voyage crossing in one of these suites costs more than a typical skilled worker would earn in 5 years. The second-class accommodations are better than first class on many other ships. The third class, the steerage, where most of the emigrants travelling to America will be housed, is also better than on any comparable ship of the period, clean, well ventilated, served with hot meals in a proper dining room, not at benches in the corridors as on older vessels. All of this takes 10 months to build. Carpenters, upholsterers, electricians, plumbers, French polishers, glaziers, artists applying decorative details to plaster ceilings and carved wooden panels. Every room, every corridor, every small corner of the ship being finished by hand. Detail upon detail upon detail, a level of craft and care that would be impossible to reproduce at that scale today. Breathe slowly. Let the ship grow in your imagination as the work continues, the engines going in, the funnels rising, the interiors filling with wood and brass and glass and fabric. A ship being filled with detail over 10 months by the steady work of thousands of hands. It is a soothing image in its way, the patience of it, the care, the slow accumulated labour of an enormous number of people, each one doing their small part, each one contributing to something that will become, in the end, something none of them could have made alone. Let yourself drift a little. The words can come more softly now. The story is in no hurry. By the spring of 1912, the Titanic is almost ready. On the 2nd of April, she leaves Belfast for her sea trials, a brief trip lasting less than 24 hours to test her engines and her steering and her responses. She performs, by all accounts, exactly as her designers had intended. She returns to Belfast that same evening. A few final adjustments are made. Then, at 8 o'clock on the evening of the 2nd of April, she leaves Belfast for the last time. She never returns. She is sailing for Southampton, where her maiden voyage will begin. The crew of the delivery voyage watch the lights of Belfast recede behind them as the ship turns south down the Irish Sea. The gantry, where she was built, is visible for a long time on the horizon, a dark, skeletal tower against the evening sky. Then, slowly, it too disappears. The Titanic is alone on the water for the first time, moving under her own power toward a future that only she will know, and that she herself will not survive long enough to understand. We will leave her there tonight. In the Irish Sea, On the evening of the 2nd of April 1912, moving south through the dark water, her lights reflecting on the surface, her engines turning for the first time on open ocean, Belfast behind her, Southampton ahead, the maiden voyage 10 days away. The iceberg, somewhere far to the north in the cold water off the coast of Greenland, has not yet begun its drift south. No one on board thinks about icebergs tonight. There is no reason to. The ship is new. The ocean is calm. The route is well known. The future. From the perspective of anyone standing on the deck of the Titanic on the evening of the 2nd of April 1912, looks like nothing more than a series of successful voyages stretching forward as far as imagination can go. Rest in that moment with her tonight. Before the voyage, before the iceberg, before any of it. When the Titanic is simply a beautiful new ship moving through the Irish Sea under the stars, on her way to begin the work she was built for, the work of carrying people across the ocean from one shore to another, safely, in the darkness. Let your body be still now. Let your breathing slow. The ship is moving south through the dark water. Her engines are turning. Her lights are on. Somewhere in her great body, in the carved paneling of the grand staircase, the clock is ticking softly. Honor and glory, crowning time. And the brass hands moving slowly around the face. Time moves for her, for a little while longer. Tomorrow and in the nights that follow, we will travel with her to Southampton and then to Cherbourg, and then to Queenstown, and then out into the open Atlantic. We will meet her passengers, we will walk her decks, we will stand with her lookouts in the crow's nest on the clear, cold night of the 14th of April. But not tonight. Tonight, she is simply sailing south through dark water, toward Southampton, toward whatever comes next. And you are resting, here, in the quiet, with the soft rhythm of the ship's engines somewhere in the distance of your imagination, if you want them, or without them, if you do not. There is nothing more required of you tonight, only rest. Only the slow, patient, unhurried settling of your body into the quiet that the night has prepared for it. Breathe slowly. Let the air come in, fill you, and leave again without effort. You are still here, still resting, and the ship is still sailing. When we left her, she was moving south through the Irish Sea on the evening of the 2nd of April 1912, her engines turning for the first time on open water, the lights of Belfast fading behind her. She sailed through the night. She sailed through the following day, and on the evening of the 3rd of April, just before midnight, she arrived quietly at the port of Southampton on the south coast of England, where her maiden voyage would begin. Let us join her there, not in a hurry. There is no hurry anywhere in this story tonight. Southampton, in April 1912, is the busiest passenger port in Britain. It sits at the head of a long sheltered body of water called Southampton Water, a natural inlet that runs inland from the English Channel, wide and deep, protected on both sides by low green coastline. The water has an unusual feature. Because of the particular shape of the English Channel and the Solent, the narrow strip of sea between the mainland and the Isle of Wight, the tide at Southampton does not behave like an ordinary tide. Instead of rising once and falling once in a 12-hour cycle, it produces what is called a double tide, two high waters, close together with only a small fall between them. The effect is to give the port an unusually long window of deep water at each high tide. Enough time for the largest ships in the world to enter and leave safely. It is one of the reasons Southampton has become the preferred port of departure for the transatlantic liners, and the reason the White Star Line has moved its express service from Liverpool to Southampton in the years before the Titanic's arrival. The new White Star dock has been built especially for the Olympic-class ships. It is deeper, longer and more modern than any other dock in the port. A single berth, berth 44, has been prepared for the Titanic's departure. She arrives just before midnight. Tugs guide her in, small, low vessels, tethered to her bow and stern with heavy ropes, pulling her slowly against the tide. Her engines have stopped. She glides, almost silent, toward the dock. A small crowd has gathered on the quayside to watch her arrive. Dock workers, shipping agents, a few late-night reporters hoping for a glimpse of the new ship. In the darkness, she appears less as a single vessel and more as a long wall of lit portholes, a floating constellation of small yellow lights, moving slowly past the stone quayside. The tugs bring her alongside, ropes are passed, the gangways are lowered. She's made fast to the bollards on the dock, the heavy hawsers tightening as the last of her momentum is absorbed. She is still in Southampton for the next 7 days. Let your body be still too. Let the words settle. The ship is tied up at the dock now, safely berthed, her engines cooling, her funnels quiet. There is nothing for you to do but listen, nothing for the ship to do but wait. The 7 days in Southampton are busy ones. Supplies are loaded. The quantities are difficult to imagine. You've 45,000 table napkins, 57,000 pieces of crockery, 29,000 pieces of glassware, 8,000 cigars for the first-class smoking rooms, 75,000 pounds of fresh meat, 40,000 fresh eggs, 7,000 heads of lettuce, 1,500 bottles of wine, and the coal. The Titanic needs nearly 6,000 tons of coal for the voyage, more than many small towns burn in a year. It is loaded through small openings on the sides of the ship, from barges brought alongside by teams of men working through the night with shovels and wheelbarrows. The work is dirty, loud, and continuous. Coal dust settles on every surface within half a mile of the dock. There is a national coal strike on at the time. It has ended officially, but many ports are still short of fuel. Several other White Star and Cunard ships have had their coal transferred to the Titanic to ensure she has enough for the crossing. The passengers who were booked on those other ships have been transferred as well, moved, some of them reluctantly, to the maiden voyage of the new flagship. They do not know yet that this transfer is the single most significant decision of their lives. For many of them, it is the last decision they will make in safety. The crew is assembled in these days too. Most of them are hired locally. Southampton is full of experienced sailors, many of them out of work because of the coal strike, and they come to the dock gates in large numbers, hoping for a berth on the new ship. By the morning of the 10th of April, the crew numbers 892. They fall into distinct groups. The deck crew, the officers, quartermasters, able-bodied seamen, the men who handle the ropes and steer the ship. The engine crew, the engineers, stokers, trimmers, greasers, the men who tend the engines and the boilers below decks. The victualling crew, The largest group, the stewards, cooks, bakers, butchers, waiters, laundrymen, bellboys, and musicians who serve the passengers above. Most of the victualling crew live on board in cramped quarters near the waterline, in the bow and stern sections of the ship. Most of the engine crew live similarly, deeper in the hull, close to the boiler rooms where they will work. The deck officers have small cabins on the boat deck and the A deck near the bridge. At the top of the command structure is Captain Edward John Smith. He is 62 years old. He has been a seafarer since the age of 12, when he left his home in Staffordshire to join the Merchant Marine. He has been a captain since he was 37. He has commanded more than a dozen White Star Line ships across a career of 40 years. He is, by reputation, the company's most trusted master, known as the millionaire's captain, because wealthy passengers would specifically request sailings he was commanding, trusting his name as much as any insurance policy. A tall, white-bearded, calm-mannered man with the quiet authority that comes from having spent his entire life in command of large ships at sea. The Titanic is intended to be his final command. He has announced privately that he plans to retire after her maiden voyage, a last command, a final crossing, then home to his wife and daughter, and to a house he has bought in Southampton, to the ordinary retirement of a man who has earned it. He stands on the bridge of the Titanic on the morning of the 10th of April. He watches the passengers coming aboard. He is in no hurry. There is still several hours before the scheduled departure at noon. He does not know, he cannot know what the crossing will bring. No one does. From the bridge of a ship in port, the ocean always looks like a thing one has crossed before. Breathe. Let the morning settle around you. It is a clear April morning in Southampton. The sun is bright. There is a little wind. The tide is rising, which is why the sailing has been scheduled for midday to catch the deep water on the way out. The passengers are arriving. Let us meet some of them. The first-class passengers come by boat train from London. A special service of the London and South Western Railway, leaving Waterloo Station in the morning, running non-stop to the dock, arriving at the quayside just a few feet from the ship's gangway. Among them are some of the wealthiest people in the world. John Jacob Astor IV, American, 47 years old, one of the richest men in the United States. His fortune, inherited from the Astor family's real estate holdings in Manhattan, is estimated at $85 million, the equivalent of billions today. He is traveling with his new young wife, Madeline, who is 19 years old and pregnant with their first child. Isidor Strauss, German-born, 67, co-owner of Macy's department store in New York. He is traveling with his wife, Ida. They have been married for 41 years. Benjamin Guggenheim, American industrialist, heir to the Guggenheim mining and smelting fortune. He is traveling with his valet and his mistress, a French singer. His wife is at home in New York, the Countess of Rothes, Margaret Brown, who will later be known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. Colonel Archibald Gracie, an American military historian. Dorothy Gibson, a silent film actress. Helen Churchill Candy, an American journalist. There are 324 first-class passengers in total. They carry among them jewels and furs and gold watches, letters of credit on London banks, secrets, ambitions, private plans that would have extended into the rest of the year, and the rest of the decade and the rest of their lives had things gone as expected. Most of them will not complete the voyage. But on the morning of the 10th of April, they are only passengers climbing up gangways, being shown to their cabins by stewards in white uniforms, opening the doors of their suites to find the rooms exactly as they had been promised, panelled in oak, furnished with brass and mahogany, fresh flowers on every table. They will dine that evening in the first-class dining saloon. They will walk on the boat deck in the long April twilight. They will retire to their cabins and read and write letters and sleep in beds that move gently with the low swell of the English Channel. For them, it is simply a voyage. The first of many they imagine they will take. The second-class passengers are more numerous, 285 of them. They are professionals mostly, school teachers, ministers, engineers, small business owners, in middle-class families emigrating to America for better prospects or returning home after visits to relatives in Europe. Among them is Lawrence Beasley, a schoolmaster from Dulwich in South London, travelling to America to visit his brother in Toronto. He will survive the voyage. He will write, within weeks of the sinking, one of the most detailed and clear-eyed accounts of the disaster that will ever be produced. Among them is the Reverend John Harper, a Scottish preacher, travelling with his 6-year-old daughter to take up a position at the Moody Church in Chicago. Among them is Kate Buss, a young Englishwoman travelling to San Diego to marry her fiancé. They come aboard more quietly than the first-class passengers. No boat train from London for them. They have travelled on ordinary services. They carry their own bags up the gangways. They are shown to their cabins, smaller than first class, but more comfortable than any second-class accommodation on any other ship. For them too, the voyage is simply a voyage. An important passage, perhaps, a beginning of something, but routine, the kind of ocean crossing that thousands of people make every year, safely, without incident. There is no reason on the morning of the 10th of April to think otherwise. The third-class passengers are the largest group of all, 709 of them. Most are emigrants, Irish, Scandinavian, Italian, Lebanese, Russian, Finnish, people leaving Europe for America, carrying their belongings in small bundles, their destinations written on cards pinned to their coats. They come aboard at the forward end of the ship, through gangways set at a different level from the first-class entrances. They are met by stewards who speak multiple languages, enough, at least, to direct each passenger to their assigned cabin or dormitory. They are checked by ship's doctors for signs of illness that might prevent them from entering the United States. The third-class areas of the Titanic are, by the standards of the time, remarkably good. The cabins are small but clean. Most are shared between 2, 4, or 6 people of the same sex. Families can request adjoining cabins, the bedding is fresh, there are toilets and washrooms that work. There is a general room where passengers can sit and talk, a smoking room for men, an open deck where they can take the air. The meals are simple but plentiful, porridge for breakfast, soup and stew for lunch, meat and potatoes for dinner, tea, bread and butter, sugar. For many of the passengers in third class, this is the most comfortable week of their lives. Some have travelled for weeks to reach Southampton, across Europe by train, across Russia, from villages near the Polish border, across Scandinavia, from farms in northern Finland. They have slept in railway stations, in boarding houses, on the floors of strangers' homes. They have eaten what they could. Now, for 6 days, they will be aboard a ship that will feed them hot meals 3 times a day, where they will have a clean bed to sleep in, where they will be carried without further effort from them across the ocean toward the new lives they have spent years imagining. They go aboard in hope, a hope that has been saved for, prepared for, dreamed of. Discussed around kitchen tables for months or years, a hope that, for most of them, will not be fulfilled. 75% of the third-class passengers will die in the sinking, but they do not know that yet. No one does. Let your breathing slow. Let the information settle gently. It is important to know who was on the ship. It is important to hold in mind, for a moment and then gently, not heavily, that these were real people, with real lives, with reasons for being there that mattered to them. But we are not there yet. The sinking is still 4 days away. Right now, on the morning of the 10th of April, they are simply boarding a ship. They are alive. They are hopeful. They are carrying bags up gangways, finding their cabins, unpacking small belongings, looking out of portholes at the bright April sky. Let them have that moment. Let the story hold them there safely for as long as it can. At 12 o'clock, the whistle blows, 3 deep, enormous blasts. The sound of the Titanic's whistles is one of the largest artificial sounds in the world at this moment. They are heard clearly across Southampton. They rattle windows a mile away. They stop conversation in the streets near the docks. The gangways are drawn back. The mooring ropes are cast off. 6 tugs take position around the ship, their small engines straining against her enormous mass. Slowly, she begins to move. Out from the berth, into the stream, the great black hull and the white superstructure and the 4 tall funnels, though only 3 of them actually carry smoke, the 4th is a dummy. Added for aesthetic balance, moving slowly down Southampton water toward the sea. And then, as she passes the berth where 2 other ships, the New York and the Oceanic, are moored side by side, something strange happens. The displacement of water caused by the Titanic's enormous hull creates a powerful suction effect. The New York, tied up next to the Oceanic, is lifted slightly by the disturbance and then, as the Titanic passes, pulled sideways toward her. The New York's mooring ropes snap, one after another, with sharp, whipping cracks that can be heard across the dock. Her stern swings out into the channel, directly towards the Titanic. For a few seconds it appears that the 2 ships will collide. Captain Smith orders the Titanic's engines reversed. The tug closest to the New York, a small vessel named the Vulcan, races into position, catches a line, begins to pull the New York's drifting stern back. The gap between the 2 hulls narrows to perhaps 4 feet, then holds, then slowly widens again. Disaster is averted. The Titanic continues on her way, delayed by an hour, but undamaged. Some of the passengers watching from the rails will remember the incident in the days that follow. It will seem, in hindsight, like an omen. A near miss at the beginning of the voyage, as if the ocean had reached out, briefly, and warned her. But in the moment it is simply a minor incident, handled well, resolved safely. The kind of small thing that happens at ports every day and is forgotten by the afternoon. The Titanic clears the harbour. She enters the English Channel. Her tugs cast off. Her engines take up their own rhythm. For the first time on her maiden voyage, she is moving under her own full power across open water. She is bound for Cherbourg, across the Channel, on the coast of northern France. A crossing of about 80 nautical miles, 4 hours of steady sailing. Rest for a moment in the crossing. The ship is moving. The Channel is calm. The long April afternoon is mild. The water dark blue and a little choppy, small waves breaking against the black sides of the hull. The passengers settle into the rhythm of the ship. First-class passengers take tea in the Café Parisien. Second-class passengers walk on the promenade deck. Third-class passengers gather in the open deck space at the bow, looking forward at the horizon, where France will soon appear as a low grey line against the afternoon sky. The engines hum steadily. The ship vibrates, very faintly, with the turning of the propellers, a gentle, almost comforting vibration, the kind that one quickly stops noticing, the way one stops noticing the sound of a clock in a familiar room. This is life on an ocean liner, slow, orderly, almost meditative. The days measured out by meals and bells and announcements from the bridge. Nothing urgent, nothing demanded. A week of moving slowly across the ocean contained inside a floating city that manages everything for you. It is, for those who can afford it, one of the most restful experiences available in the world of 1912. Let yourself share in that rest tonight. You do not need to be on the ship to feel it, the slow, steady, unhurried movement, the sense of being carried, the long afternoons with nowhere particular to be. Let that feeling settle around you. Let your body soften into it. By early evening, the Titanic anchors off Cherbourg. The harbour is too shallow for her to enter directly. Instead, she drops anchor in the deeper water outside the breakwater, and two smaller vessels, tenders, called the Nomadic and the Traffic, come out from the port to meet her. The Nomadic carries the first and second-class passengers. The Traffic carries third-class passengers and mail. Among those boarding at Cherbourg are more of the wealthy: Margaret Brown, who has just returned from travels in Egypt, Benjamin Guggenheim, Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon and Lady Duff Gordon. And among those boarding are also large numbers of emigrants from southern and eastern Europe, Syrians, Armenians, Lebanese, travelling via France on their way to the United States. They fill most of the third-class cabins not already occupied at Southampton. The boarding takes about 90 minutes. By 8 o'clock in the evening, the Titanic weighs anchor and turns northwest toward her next port of call, Queenstown, on the southern coast of Ireland. The light is fading, the channel is darkening, the coast of France slips behind her, and the open sea opens ahead. Her first night on the voyage proper has begun. She sails through the night. At sea, at night, a great ocean liner becomes something different from what she is during the day. The long promenade decks are mostly empty. A few passengers walk under the electric lights, coats drawn tight against the April cold. Most are below decks, in the dining saloons for late dinner, are in the lounges with drinks and card games, in the libraries reading by shaded lamps. In the boiler rooms, far below the waterline, the stokers are working 4-hour shifts, shoveling coal into the furnaces, opening and closing fire doors, watching the steam pressure, adjusting the drafts. The temperature in the boiler rooms is over 40 degrees Celsius. The men strip to the waist. They drink enormous quantities of water, oatmeal water sometimes, to replace the salt lost in their sweat. In the engine rooms, the engineers tend to the great reciprocating engines, 4 cylinders rising and falling in slow, majestic strokes, the polished brass glistening in the yellow light, a gentle mist of steam and oil in the air. On the bridge, an officer stands watch. The ship's wheel is small, no larger than the wheel of a small yacht, and connected by hydraulic steering gear to the great rudder far below. A quartermaster stands at the wheel making tiny corrections. A junior officer records positions and observations in a logbook, and in the crow's nest, high up the foremast, 2 lookouts stand watch. They scan the dark water ahead. They turn slowly, left and right, their eyes moving across the horizon for anything unusual. The lights of other ships, the outline of a distant coast, the shape of anything in the water that should not be there. They are the eyes of the ship. On a calm, clear night, with the moon up, they can see for miles. On a dark night, without the moon, they see less. But that is not yet tonight. Tonight, the first full night at sea, is an ordinary sailing night. Cold, clear. The lights of the Cornish coast visible on the horizon for several hours before they fade. The ship sails on, and the passengers sleep. Or they do not sleep, but rest quietly in their cabins, reading by the soft electric lamps, writing letters they will post in Queenstown the next morning. Either way, the voyage continues, steady, quiet, unremarkable. She arrives at Queenstown on the morning of the 11th of April. Queenstown, known today as Cove, is a small harbour on the southern coast of Ireland. It is the last port of call before the open Atlantic. Again, the harbour is too shallow for the Titanic to dock. Again, tenders come out from the port, carrying mailbags and carrying the last group of passengers. 123 people board at Queenstown. Almost all of them are Irish emigrants. Most of them are young. Most of them have never been on a ship of any kind before, let alone the largest ship in the world. They arrive by the small tender, crammed onto its decks, clutching their belongings, looking up at the Titanic as she looms above them, a great black wall of steel several stories high. Some of them are frightened by the scale of her. Some laugh in amazement, a few weep openly for the families they are leaving, for the country they have known, for the enormous uncertainty of what lies ahead. They come aboard. They are shown to their cabins in the forward sections of the third class, already crowded. They settle themselves slowly into the space they have been given. At 1:30 in the afternoon, the last mailbags are loaded, the tenders pull away, the anchors come up, the Titanic's engines engage. She turns her bow westward, toward New York, across 3,000 miles of open ocean. Breathe slowly, very slowly now. She is leaving Europe. Behind her, the coast of Ireland recedes, low green hills, small white houses, the harbour entrance slowly shrinking as the ship steams away. Some of the passengers, the Irish emigrants, who have just boarded, stand at the stern rail and watch their country disappear. They are, many of them, looking at Ireland for the last time. Not because of what will happen on the voyage, but because emigration in 1912 is usually permanent. Most who leave do not return. They stand at the rail, they watch. the land grows smaller, and eventually it is only a thin line on the horizon, and then nothing at all. They turn, most of them, and go below. The voyage has become now simply a voyage. Oh, the ocean in every direction, the next land 5 days away. Let yourself feel the bigness of that moment, not heavily, gently. A ship in the open ocean. More than 2,000 people aboard, each one with their reasons for being there. Each one carried forward by the steady turning of the engines, each one contained in a small floating world that is entirely self-sufficient: food, water, fuel, shelter, entertainment for the duration of the crossing. The rest of the world recedes. There are no news broadcasts to hear, no telephone calls, no sense of events beyond the ship. The only connection to the outside is the wireless telegraph, a recent invention, still unfamiliar, operated by 2 young Marconi operators in a small cabin high in the superstructure, who send and receive messages across hundreds of miles of empty ocean. For the passengers, the world has narrowed to the ship. For 5 days, the Titanic is everything. The first day at sea, the 11th of April, after Queenstown, passes without incident. The weather is fair. The sea is calm. The ship makes good speed, 20.5 knots according to the noon position. The passengers settle into the routines of shipboard life: breakfast in their dining saloons, walks on deck. Bouillon served at 11 in the morning in cups of clear broth carried by stewards from deck chair to deck chair. Luncheon, afternoon tea. The orchestra plays in the lounge from 4 o'clock. Dinner, long and formal in first class, taken over several courses with wines selected by the head steward. Coffee and cigars afterwards. Card games, reading, early bed. In second class, the routines are simpler but similar. It's meals at fixed times, a smaller orchestra playing in the lounge, conversation, books from the ship's library. In third class, the emigrants gather in the general room, the large common space on the D deck. Someone plays a fiddle, others dance. Songs in many languages, Irish, Swedish, Italian, Arabic, drift down the corridors. Children run in small groups between the cabins, older men play cards. There is a sense, reported by many who survived, of unusual optimism aboard the Titanic. Not merely the usual hopefulness of any voyage, but something more. A sense of participating in something historic. A sense, even among the third-class passengers, that this particular ship on this particular voyage was special. Many of them wrote letters home during the crossing, letters to be posted when the ship reached New York. Letters that described the ship in enthusiastic detail, the size of the public rooms, the quality of the food, the smoothness of the motion, the kindness of the stewards. Most of these letters did not survive. They went down with the ship. The mailbags were in a dedicated compartment low in the hull. The mail clerks, 5 men, part of the crew, died trying to save the letters as the water rose around them. But some letters did survive, handed to friends going ashore at Queenstown, written on the first night of the open ocean crossing and tucked into pockets, not yet mailed, carried in the hands of survivors who were picked up by the Carpathia. They show us, in their small way, what the voyage felt like before the iceberg. They show us that it was ordinary, that it was happy, or that no one aboard expected anything other than arrival in New York on the 17th of April. Let that ordinariness settle around you. The small, quiet details of a voyage that was, for most of its length, simply a voyage. A great ship, moving steadily across a cold blue ocean, carrying 2,200 people toward a city they had not yet seen. The second day at sea, the 12th of April, is similar. The weather holds, the ship makes good speed. The noon position shows her well into the Atlantic, far from land in every direction. During the afternoon, the wireless operators, Jack Phillips, the senior, and Harold Bride, his young assistant, begin to receive messages from other ships in the area. These include the first mentions of ice, not close, not alarming, but present. A French liner, the La Touraine, has reported a field of ice some distance to the north of the Titanic's course. Other ships report similar observations, an unusually southerly migration of ice this spring from the Greenland glaciers carried by the cold Labrador Current into the North Atlantic shipping lanes. Captain Smith receives the messages. He reviews them with his officers on the bridge. The ice at this point is north of the planned course. There is no particular concern. The Titanic will pass well south of the reported positions. The messages are noted. Some are posted on the officers' chart room. Others are simply acknowledged and filed away. The ship sails on. On the third day, the 13th of April, more ice messages arrive. The pattern is becoming clearer. Many ships are reporting ice, some to the north, some directly along the standard shipping route. The ice field is large. It stretches for dozens of miles across the Atlantic shipping lanes south of Newfoundland. Captain Smith adjusts the course slightly. The Titanic will take a more southerly route, standard practice for this time of year when ice has been reported, not a major deviation, a few miles south of the usual track. The ship continues at her normal speed. There is no reason yet to slow her. The ice is still ahead. It will be reached sometime late on the 14th of April, the next night. By then, the Titanic will be past the thickest of it, having threaded a course south of the reported positions. It is what any competent captain would do. It is what Captain Smith has done before, many times, on many crossings. Ice has always been part of the North Atlantic shipping routes in April. It has always been navigated around, not through. The steady, unshaken faith of the experienced ocean captain is that ice, at night, in open water, is visible and therefore avoidable. The faith will be tested, but not tonight. Tonight, the ship sails on. The passengers enjoy their third dinner of the voyage. The orchestra plays, cards are dealt. Children sleep in cabins below. The wireless operators tap out personal messages for the wealthy passengers. Greetings to be sent to New York friends. Notes of safe travel to be passed along to Europe. The ship is contented, peaceful, crossing the ocean as she was designed to do. Let your body be completely still now. Let your breathing slow to its resting pace. We will leave her again tonight, in this peaceful moment, 3 days out from Ireland, 2 days from New York, moving through the dark Atlantic on the night of the 13th of April, 1912. Her passengers are sleeping, her engines are turning, her lights shine softly across the water, visible for miles in the clear spring air. The ice is ahead, but not yet. Tonight, she is only a beautiful ship on a calm ocean doing the work she was built for, carrying people across the dark water safely through the night. Rest with her in that moment. Let the story hold her there, still safe, still whole, still sailing for as long as you need. There is no hurry toward what comes next. Not tonight. Tonight, she is sailing, and so are you, quietly, through your own dark water, toward morning which is still hours away. Breathe. Slowly. You are still here, still resting, and the ship is still sailing. The date is the 14th of April, 1912, a Sunday, the 5th day of the maiden voyage. The sun rises over a calm, cold Atlantic. The air is sharper than it has been. The sea temperature has dropped noticeably overnight. Passengers walking on deck in the early morning find that their breath shows in the air. Small clouds of white that hang briefly before disappearing. The ship is entering colder water. She has crossed the invisible line where the warm waters of the Gulf Stream meet the cold waters of the Labrador Current, the great southward flowing current that carries ice from the Greenland glaciers down into the North Atlantic shipping lanes. The sea is flat, unusually flat, no wind, no swell. The surface of the ocean looks almost like polished dark glass, reflecting the sky above without distortion. Experienced sailors know that such flat water is uncommon in the North Atlantic. They also know, though few speak of it, that flat water makes icebergs harder to see at night. Without waves breaking against the base of an iceberg, without the faint white line of foam at the waterline, an iceberg in calm water can be nearly invisible until it is very close. But it is still morning. The iceberg is still many hours away. The passengers are waking up. It is Sunday, so there are church services aboard. Captain Smith himself leads the Protestant service in the first-class dining saloon. The passengers gather in rows, the men in dark suits, the women in coats over their Sunday dresses. A hymn is sung, a prayer is read. It is a standard service. Nothing memorable. Nothing that anyone who survived would later recall in detail, except for one thing. One of the hymns chosen for the morning is Eternal Father, Strong to Save, the traditional prayer of those at sea. Its opening verse includes the lines, "O hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea." The congregation sings it. The words echo briefly under the high ceiling of the dining saloon among the crystal chandeliers and the royal crown derby plates. Then they fade. The service continues. The congregation disperses for lunch. No one at the time thinks much of the choice of hymn. It is a hymn for Sunday at sea. It has been sung 100 times before, on 100 other voyages, but only in the days afterwards, when the survivors of the sinking try to remember everything they can of that last Sunday, will the choice of hymn seem to mean something, as if the ship had been trying quietly to warn herself, breathe slowly. The day passes. Lunch is served. Afternoon tea is served. Passengers walk on deck or read in their cabins or write letters. The orchestra plays in the reception room at 4 o'clock. The light is soft and silver through the windows, a pale April Sunday light, cold and clean. In the wireless cabin, Jack Phillips is busy. The backlog of passenger messages has grown during the voyage. Wealthy passengers paying for private telegrams to be sent ahead to New York. Personal notes, business communications. Phillips works through them steadily, tapping out the messages in Morse code, sending them via a relay station at Cape Race in Newfoundland. Throughout the day, ice warnings continue to arrive from other ships. The steamer Coronia reports ice. The Noor Dam reports ice. The Baltic reports ice. The America reports ice. The Mesaba reports a large field of ice, pack ice, growlers, icebergs, directly across the Titanic's projected course. Some of these warnings are taken to the bridge. Some are posted in the chart room. Some, because Phillips is busy with personal messages, because the wireless system is still new and the protocols for safety messages, not yet standardized, are set aside. The Mesaba's warning specifically does not reach Captain Smith. It is the most detailed warning of the day. It gives precise coordinates for the ice field. It corresponds almost exactly to the position where the Titanic will strike the iceberg a few hours later. It is not passed up to the bridge. Phillips acknowledges receipt, sets it aside, returns to the queue of paid passenger messages. This is not incompetence. It is the ordinary working practice of 1912. Wireless operators are employees of the Marconi Company, not of the shipping line. Their primary job, in commercial terms, is to send passenger messages for a fee. Safety messages are handled when time permits. The protocols will change after the Titanic, but they have not changed yet. And so the Mesaba's warning sits, unread, in the wireless cabin. Let your breathing slow. It is important not to dwell too heavily on what was missed. These things are part of the story. They matter, but they are not for tonight to carry with weight. Tonight, we are simply watching the day unfold quietly, the way it unfolded for those on board who did not know what was coming, who had no way to know, who were simply living their ordinary Sunday on an ocean liner in the middle of the Atlantic. Let the day be what it was for them, an ordinary day, cold, quiet, uneventful. Evening falls, the sky darkens, the stars appear, and they appear with remarkable brightness. There is no moon tonight. The new moon was only 3 days ago. The sky is black, and the stars are sharp, and the Milky Way arches overhead from horizon to horizon. Passengers remark on the clarity of the stars. Several survivors will remember the night sky of the 14th of April as one of the most beautiful they had ever seen. The temperature drops further. By 8 o'clock, the air is near freezing. 8. Passengers who walk on deck after dinner bundle themselves in heavy coats and do not stay long. Dinner in first class is, as every dinner has been, a long and formal affair. Oysters, consommé, salmon, filet mignons, roast duckling, sirloin of beef, pâté de foie gras, Waldorf pudding, peaches in Chartreuse jelly, French ice cream. It takes several hours. The wine is poured generously. The orchestra plays softly in the reception room next door. Conversations drift from table to table. Isidore and Ida Strauss sit together, as they always do. They have been married for 41 years. They will die together 3.5 hours from now in the same way. John Jacob Astor and his young wife Madeline dine at a small table apart. She is 5 months pregnant. He will make sure she survives. He will not. At other tables, the other wealthy passengers, some of them laughing, some serious, all of them eating a meal they do not know is their last. Let the image be gentle. People at dinner, the light low and warm, the conversation quiet, candlelight in the cut glass, a moment of ordinary happiness on a cold Sunday evening at sea. By 10 o'clock, most passengers have retired to their cabins. The ship is quiet. A few men linger in the first-class smoking room playing cards. A few couples walk briefly on deck, then retreat from the cold. In second class, most lights are out. In third class, the general room has fallen silent. On the bridge, the watch has changed. First Officer William Murdoch has taken over from Second Officer Charles Lightoller at 10 o'clock. Captain Smith has come to the bridge for a brief conversation. He noted the conditions, clear, calm, cold, and retired to his cabin to rest, leaving standing orders that he is to be called immediately if the slightest concern arises. In the Crow's Nest, the lookouts have also changed. Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee are on duty from 10 until midnight. They climb the long iron ladder up the foremast, arrive at the small platform 50 feet above the deck, and take up their watch. They have a problem. The binoculars that should be in the Crow's Nest are not there. They were left behind in Southampton, in a cabinet, the key to which is now in the pocket of an officer who was transferred off the ship before she sailed. Fleet and Lee are watching with their naked eyes. It would probably not have made a difference. Binoculars reduce the field of view. They are useful for identifying objects already spotted, but not for scanning. The lookouts will scan with their naked eyes regardless. But it is another small thing, another small piece that did not go as it should have gone, another small contribution to what is about to happen. Breathe slowly. The ship is still moving, 22.5 knots. Her best speed of the voyage so far. Captain Smith has maintained full speed despite the ice warnings, standard practice for the time on a clear night when ice is expected to be visible at sufficient distance to be avoided. In the Crow's Nest, Fleet and Lee watch the dark water ahead. The stars are brilliant above them. The sea is absolutely flat. There is no moon. There is no wind. At some point during their watch, they notice a slight haze on the horizon ahead. It is nothing alarming. Hazes come and go, but Fleet remarks on it quietly to Lee. They continue to watch. At 11:39, Fleet sees something directly ahead, darker than the water, a shape rising out of the flat black ocean. He does not at first know what it is. For a fraction of a second he tries to make sense of it. A ship perhaps, a low cloud, a trick of the eye. Then he sees clearly an iceberg, not small, directly in the ship's path, close. He reaches for the bell above his head. He strikes it 3 times, the standard signal for an object dead ahead. Then he picks up the telephone that connects the Crow's Nest to the bridge. 6th Officer James Moody answers. "What did you see?" Moody asks. Fleet's voice is tight but controlled. 3 words. "Iceberg. Hawk, right ahead." Moody passes the report to First Officer Murdoch, who is already watching from the bridge wing. Murdoch has seen it too. He gives 3 orders rapidly in succession. Harder starboard, to turn the bow to the left, away from the iceberg. Full astern, to reverse the engines. Close the watertight doors, to seal the ship's compartments in case of collision. The quartermaster spins the wheel. The engine room telegraphs the order to the engineers below. The bridge officer throws the switch that closes the watertight doors throughout the ship. All of this happens in the space of about 20 seconds. The Titanic begins, very slowly, to respond. Her bow begins to swing to port. Her engines begin to slow, the watertight doors begin to close, but she is a very large ship. She is moving very fast. And the iceberg is very close. Let your breathing be slow, very slow. We are watching something now that cannot be undone, a process that, once begun, moves forward on its own momentum. But do not hold it with tension. We are telling a story that has been told many times. We know what happens. We are here to sit with it quietly, not to suffer through it. Let the ship turn slowly in the dark. Let the iceberg come. You are safe. You are in your bed or wherever you are resting. Nothing is happening to you. The events we are describing happened more than a century ago to people who are long at rest. The story can hold them gently. And so can you. The collision takes about 10 seconds. From the moment the iceberg touches the ship to the moment it slides past the stern, 10 seconds. It is not a dramatic impact, not a crash, not a jolt that throws people from their beds. Most of the passengers, in fact, barely feel it. A slight shudder, a grinding sound, faint and brief, a sensation to those who notice it at all, like a train passing over a rough section of track. The iceberg has not struck the Titanic head-on. Murdoch's turn has partially succeeded. The bow has swung just enough to the left that the iceberg does not strike dead-on, which would have crumpled the bow inward but might have left most of the ship intact. Instead, the iceberg scrapes along the starboard side of the hull, below the waterline, a glancing blow running the length of the forward portion of the ship. The iceberg itself is mostly submerged, only a small portion visible above the surface. The underwater mass of it, blue-white, silent, or harder than concrete, is what contacts the hull. It opens a series of small gashes in the steel plating. Not a single large hole. Small openings, some only a few centimeters wide, distributed along about 300 feet of the hull, just below the waterline, just where water can begin to enter. The total area of the openings is estimated afterwards at about 12 square feet. Not much, but enough. The openings cross 6 separate watertight compartments at the forward end of the ship. 6. The Titanic is designed to remain afloat with 4 compartments flooded, perhaps 5 in some configurations, not 6. She is, from the moment the iceberg slides past her stern, though no one yet knows it, already sinking. The iceberg drifts past. Some passengers, hearing the faint, grinding sound, come to their portholes and look out. A few see a dark mass drifting astern in the starlight, a tall shape, white on top, disappearing behind the ship, then nothing. The sea is flat again, the stars are bright. The Titanic continues forward at a slowly reducing speed, her engines now reversed, her bow still swinging to port. On deck, a small amount of ice has fallen, chunks broken off the iceberg as it scraped along the side. They lie on the starboard well deck of the forecastle, small white pieces, cold and strange. Third-class passengers, roused by the sound, come out to look. Some pick up the ice. A few throw it at each other, laughing. One young Irishman kicks a piece of ice across the deck like a football. They do not yet know. No one yet knows. Except Captain Smith, who has been summoned from his cabin, except First Officer Murdoch, who gives his report on the bridge, except Thomas Andrews, who is woken from his own cabin by a steward and asked to come assess the damage. Within an hour, Andrews will have walked the forward compartments. He will have seen the water rising in the mailroom, in the forepeak, in the first 5 boiler rooms. He will have done the calculation in his head, and he will tell Captain Smith quietly what the calculation says. The ship will sink in perhaps an hour and a half, perhaps 2 hours, no more than that. But that conversation has not yet happened. For now, in the first minutes after the collision, the ship is still floating almost level. Her lights are still on. Her engines are still turning slowly. Her passengers are still, most of them, in their cabins, turning over in their sleep or frowning briefly at the unfamiliar sound already beginning to drift back under. Let us leave her there tonight, in this strange, quiet moment. After the collision, before the realization, the brief, suspended interval in which the fate of the ship has been decided, but nobody yet knows it, except for the 3 or 4 men on the bridge and in the wireless cabin, who are beginning, quietly, to do the arithmetic. The ship is still beautiful tonight, she is still warm, still lit, still full of sleeping passengers who believe they will arrive in New York on Wednesday morning. The orchestra members are in their cabins, the stewards are quietly finishing their rounds. The stokers below are feeling, perhaps, a faint drop in pressure in the boilers, but continuing their work. And the ship does not know she's sinking, not yet. She's simply floating in the cold, calm water of the North Atlantic on a beautiful, star-lit Sunday night, as she has been doing for the last 4 days, as she seems to believe she will continue doing forever. Let her rest there a while and let yourself rest too. Your body's heavy, your breathing is slow, the night is very deep around you. The story will continue tomorrow or later, or whenever you return to it. It is in no hurry. It has been patient for more than 100 years. It can be patient a little longer. Breathe. Slowly. You are still here, still resting, and the ship is still floating. When we left her, she was drifting in the cold, star-lit water of the North Atlantic, her engines slowing, her passengers mostly unaware that anything had happened. It is now just after midnight on the 15th of April, 1912. 20 minutes have passed since the collision. Thomas Andrews is walking the forward compartments, slowly, carefully, with a small notebook in his hand, a torch, the same quiet manner he has carried through the shipyards of Belfast for 20 years. He walks down into the forward cargo holds, water, rising fast. He walks into the mailroom, where the 5 mail clerks are already trying to drag the soaked sacks of letters up to higher ground. Water there too, already waist deep. He walks into the first boiler room, and the second, and the third. He does the mathematics. He does not need to write anything down. He has known this ship since the first drawings on paper. He knows every compartment, every bulkhead, every watertight door. He knows exactly how much buoyancy the forward sections of the hull can lose before the water begins to spill over the top of the transverse bulkheads, and then, inevitably, compartment to compartment through the open upper decks. He knows. He walks back up to the bridge. He finds Captain Smith alone at the chart table. He tells him, quietly, what he has seen. The ship will founder. There is no possibility otherwise. The rate of flooding is too great. The pumps cannot hold it. An hour, perhaps an hour and a half, certainly no more than 2. Captain Smith listens. He does not argue. He does not ask Andrews to check again. He has, in 40 years at sea, learned when to trust the judgment of a good engineer, and Thomas Andrews is the best engineer he has ever known. He nods. Then he gives the orders. Let your breathing slow. There is a particular kind of quiet that descends on a ship when the officers know and the passengers do not. The orchestra is still playing. The lights are still bright. The stewards are still moving quietly through the corridors. But on the bridge, Behind closed doors, decisions are being made that will determine who lives and who does not. Captain Smith issues 3 orders. First, uncover the lifeboats. Second, muster the passengers on deck in their lifebelts. Third, begin loading the boats. He also orders the wireless operators to begin sending distress signals. Jack Phillips and Harold Bride in the wireless cabin begin tapping out the standard Marconi signal, CQD, 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 the call for any ship that can hear. Later, during the long night, Bride will suggest to Phillips that they also try the new International Distress Signal, SOS, which has been adopted only a few years before and is not yet in common use. They do. The Titanic becomes one of the first ships to use SOS as a call for help. The message they send is simple: CQD SOS Titanic. Position 4146 north, 5014 west. Require immediate assistance. Come at once. We have struck an iceberg. Sinking. It goes out across the Atlantic, a thin electrical signal, crossing hundreds of miles of dark ocean, received by shore stations, received by other ships, received by the Carpathia, a Cunard liner 58 miles away, which immediately turns and races toward the position at her best speed, 58 miles. At 17 knots, the Carpathia's maximum, it will take more than 3 hours to arrive. The Titanic has less than 2 hours. She will be gone before help reaches her. But for now, the signals are going out, and the world, for the first time, begins to know. The lifeboats. There are 20 of them. 16 wooden boats carried in davits along the boat deck, 8 on each side of the ship. 4 smaller collapsible boats, canvas-sided craft that can be expanded when needed, stored on the roof of the officers' quarters and on the boat deck itself. Total capacity, 1,178. Passengers and crew aboard, 2,224. The numbers do not match. They never could. This is not a mistake. This is the regulation. At the British Board of Trade Rules of 1894, which are still in force in 1912, require lifeboat capacity based on the tonnage of the ship, not the number of passengers. The Titanic, at 46,000 tons, is required to carry enough lifeboats for approximately 1,000 people. She carries slightly more than the minimum. The regulations are 18 years out of date. They were written when ships were smaller. They were never updated to reflect the new scale of the Olympic class. The ship is not, legally, under-equipped. She is, in every practical sense, under-equipped by more than 1,000 lifeboat seats. Thomas Andrews, during the design process, argued for more lifeboats. He proposed a system of davits made by the Whaling Company that could carry up to 48 boats along the boat deck. But the davits were installed, but only enough boats to meet the regulation were supplied. The empty davits stood in their sockets, unused. There was, among the designers and the company, a view that lifeboats were not the primary safety measure. The primary safety measure was the ship herself, her watertight compartments, her damage resistance, her practical unsinkability. The lifeboats were intended only to transfer passengers to a rescue ship, not to save them all at once. It was not, in 1912, an unreasonable view, until it was. Breathe slowly. The passengers are being woken. Stewards move through the corridors, knocking on cabin doors. The instructions are calm. Please dress warmly. Please put on your life belt. Please come up to the boat deck. It is a precaution. There is no cause for alarm. Most passengers do not believe, at first, that there is any real emergency. The ship is level. The lights are on. The orchestra is still playing. In the first-class lounge at first, and later, as the night wears on the boat deck itself, where the musicians move their instruments to be nearer to the passengers. They will play until the ship goes down. Not one of them will survive. The first-class passengers come up slowly. Some have dressed carefully, wives in evening gowns and furs, men in overcoats and hats. Some carry jewellery cases, some carry nothing. Most believe, as they emerge onto the boat deck, that they will shortly be sent back below. The night is very cold. The stars are very bright. The Atlantic is absolutely flat. There is no wind. There is no moon. There is only the black sea and the black sky and the billion points of silver light above. It is, by all survivor accounts, the most beautiful night any of them had ever seen. The loading of the boats begins at about 12:45 in the morning. Boat number 7 goes first. It has a capacity of 65 people. It is lowered, carrying 28. This pattern will continue through the night. Boat after boat, lowered half empty. Some with only 12 people in them, some with 20. Almost none filled to capacity. The reasons are several. First, the officers loading the boats on the port side under Second Officer Lightoller interpret women and children first to mean women and children only. He turns men away even when there are empty seats. He lowers boats with visible gaps in them because there are no more women and children present on that section of the deck at that moment. On the starboard side, under First Officer Murdoch, the rule is interpreted more loosely. Men are allowed into boats when no women and children are waiting. More people are saved from that side. Not many more, but some. Second, many passengers simply do not believe they are in danger. The ship feels level. The ship feels warm. The idea of getting into a small open boat on a freezing night on a flat black ocean seems more dangerous than staying aboard. Many refuse. Many delay. Third, the crew have never practiced loading the boats under realistic conditions. There has been no proper drill. The lifeboat drill scheduled for that very Sunday morning was cancelled by Captain Smith for reasons that remain unknown. The officers do not know precisely how many people the boats can safely hold in the water. They err on the side of lowering them with fewer people, believing that they can be filled more fully once alongside on the water. This last plan does not work. Very few boats return to pick up more passengers. Most row away from the sinking ship and stay clear, afraid of being pulled under. And so the boats go out, one after another, carrying only a fraction of the people they could have carried. Let that settle quietly. Not as anger, not as judgment, simply as fact. The people making these decisions were tired, cold, and doing their best under circumstances no one had prepared them for. They were men of their time, with the training of their time, acting in real minutes of real fear, at the edge of a disaster no one had imagined possible. They did what they could. It was not enough, but it was what they could. The ship begins to lean forward, slowly at first, very slowly, a tilt so gentle that passengers walking on the boat deck notice it only when they see the horizon at an unfamiliar angle. Water has entered the forward sections. The bow is settling. The stern, by contrast, is beginning to rise. In the first-class corridors near the bow, water has begun to seep up through the lower decks. Stewards see it rising along the grand staircases. Carpeted floors grow wet, then soaked, then submerged. The ship is going down by the head. As she does, the water moves aft. Through every open door, every stairway, every corridor. Slowly, relentlessly, fulfilling the mathematics Thomas Andrews did an hour earlier. In the tilt increases. By 1:30, the forward well deck is awash. The ocean is level with the promenade of A deck. Passengers on the boat deck can look down and see the dark water close beneath them, where there had been 3 stories of dry ship only an hour before. The atmosphere on deck changes. The belief that the ship was safe has ended. The loading of the boats becomes more urgent. Later, boats are loaded closer to capacity. By the final boats, there are no more empty seats. There are not enough boats for everyone remaining. The third-class passengers, through most of this, are still mostly below decks. Not because they are being kept there by locked gates, and the stories of locked gates are, in most cases, not supported by the evidence, but because they do not know the way up. The ship's layout is complicated. The corridors are long, the signs are few, the stewards do their best to guide them, but there are far too many passengers and far too few stewards. Many families, especially those who speak little English, become separated in the confusion. Many wait, politely, in the corridors for instructions that never come. Some make their way up on their own, some find an Irish steward, John Hart, a name worth remembering, who leads groups of third-class passengers up through the first-class areas to the boat deck, then goes back down to find another group, and another. He saves perhaps 50 people. He survives. Others do not find their way up in time. Others reach the decks when all the boats are gone. Others are still below when the water reaches them. Let this part of the story rest lightly on you. These are real people. Their suffering was real. We do not need to dwell on it to honor it. We need only to remember that they were there and that most of them did not come back. That is enough. By 2 o'clock in the morning, most of the lifeboats are gone. They drift at a distance, the passengers inside watching the Titanic from the water. Her lights are still on. Every porthole, every public room, every string of electric bulbs along the decks. She glitters against the black ocean like a small city, strangely tilted, slowly going down. The orchestra is still playing. The sound carries faintly across the calm water. The passengers in the boats, wrapped in coats and blankets, listen. Some of them weep quietly. Some of them say nothing at all. On deck, those who remain, perhaps 1,500 people still aboard, have accepted, by now, that there are no more boats. Some go back below into the first-class smoking room, where a few men sit in leather chairs and wait. Benjamin Guggenheim puts on his evening dress and says famously, "We've dressed in our best and are prepared to go down as gentlemen." Some go to the stern, where the angle of the ship is less steep. A priest, Father Thomas Biles, a second-class passenger, hears confessions and leads prayers on the poop deck. Dozens kneel with him. He will not survive. Thomas Andrews is last seen in the first-class smoking room. He is alone. His lifebelt is on a chair beside him. He is staring at a painting on the wall, a painting of the entrance to Plymouth Harbour, the port where many White Star voyages have ended safely. A steward asks him if he is going to try to save himself. He does not answer. Captain Smith walks the bridge. At some point, no one is certain exactly when, he releases the crew from their duties. "It's every man for himself now," he says. Then he is not seen again by anyone who survived. Isidor and Ida Strauss are on the boat deck. He is offered a place in a boat because of his age. He refuses. He will not go before other men. She is offered a place. She refuses. "Where you go, I go," she says. They sit down together on a pair of deck chairs near the first-class entrance and wait. John Jacob Astor places Madeleine in a boat. He asks if he may join her because of her pregnancy. He is told no. He steps back. He tosses his gloves down to her in the boat. He waves. The boat is lowered. The ship continues to sink. Let your breathing be very slow. We are near the end of this part. And there is something in this hour that deserves to be sat with quietly, not grieved over, not dramatized, simply noticed, the way people behaved when they knew. Most of them, most of the time, with enormous dignity. Saying goodbye, praying together, staying with husbands, with wives, with children, giving up seats in boats, standing together on a deck that was slowly going down into the sea. Not all of them, not every person. There was panic too, there was some selfishness, there was fear. But mostly, and this is the thing that survivors remembered most clearly and wrote about most often, mostly, there was a strange, quiet courage, people being kinder in the last hour of their lives than they might have imagined they could be. That is the Titanic too. Not only the arrogance of unsinkable, not only the mathematics of watertight compartments, not only the iceberg, also this. 2,000 people on a cold, starlit night, facing the end of their lives with more grace than most of us, in our safe beds tonight, would probably manage. By 2:15, the water has reached the bridge. The bow is now fully submerged. The forward funnel, freed by the weight of water, tilts slowly, then topples into the sea, striking the water with an enormous splash. Dozens of people in the water near it are crushed or drowned by the impact. The stern continues to rise higher, higher. Passengers clinging to the after rails find themselves gradually more and more distant from the water. The propellers lift out of the sea. The ship begins to stand, almost upright, in the dark. At 2:18, the lights go out. For a moment, the Titanic is only a vast black silhouette against the stars. Then, with a deep, grinding sound, the sound of everything loose inside her, falling forward, machinery breaking free of its mounts, enormous iron structures shifting under their own weight, she begins to break apart. She splits in two between the third and fourth funnels. The forward section goes under, the stern section falls back, almost level with the water, then rises again as the bow fills and disappears. For perhaps a minute, the stern stands vertical in the ocean, 200 feet of ship rising straight up into the night sky, silhouetted against the stars. Then, slowly, it slips under. At 2:20, the Titanic is gone. 2 hours and 40 minutes after the collision, the sea is flat again. The stars are bright. Where the ship that had been, there is only dark water, a small field of wreckage, and the voices of more than 1,500 people in the freezing sea. The voices continue for perhaps in 20 minutes. Then, slowly, they stop. The water is 28 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 degrees below freezing. No one in that water can survive it for more than a short time. The lifebelts keep the bodies afloat, but the cold takes them. By 3 o'clock, the silence is nearly complete. The lifeboats drift, most of them at a distance, their occupants huddled against the cold. No one rows back. Almost no one. The fear of being swamped by desperate swimmers is too great. And above all of this, above the boats, above the dead, above the quiet surface of the ocean, the stars continue, brilliant, cold, indifferent. The same stars that have been watching the Atlantic for as long as there has been an Atlantic. The ship is gone. The ocean has closed over her, and below, 2 miles below, she is beginning her long, slow descent into the dark. Rest now. Let the night hold you. There is a great deal of sadness in this part of the story, but there is also peace. The peace that comes after, the peace of a calm sea that has done what the ocean has always done and will always do. The Titanic is beneath the water now, falling slowly through the midnight zone, through the abyss, toward the seafloor 2.5 miles below, where she will come to rest at last and remain undisturbed for 73 years. But that is for later. Tonight, she's only falling, and you are only resting. Your breathing is slow, your body is heavy. The night is very deep around you. Let it be enough for now to have come this far in the story. The rest can wait. Breathe. Slowly. You are still here, still resting, and the ocean above her has closed. When we left her, she was falling. 2.5 miles of dark water between her and the surface. A long, slow descent into a place no human eye had ever seen, and would not see for the next 73 years. Let us follow her down, slowly, very slowly. The 2 halves of the ship do not fall together. The bow section, the heavier, more streamlined forward half, falls first and falls cleanly. Most of its weight is concentrated in the engine spaces and the forward compartments, already filled with water. It travels downward in something close to a straight line, slicing through the deep like a great steel arrow. It takes perhaps 6 minutes to reach the bottom. The stern section falls differently. It is lighter. It has been twisted and shattered by the break. It spirals as it descends, turning slowly in the dark, shedding debris in a long trail behind it. Plates of steel tear free. Fittings break loose. Ornaments, furniture, personal belongings spill from the wreckage and drift downward at their own pace. The stern takes longer to arrive. When it does, it strikes the sea floor with enormous force, burying itself several meters into the soft sediment, collapsing further under its own weight, coming to rest about 600 meters from the bow. Between them, on the sea floor, lies the debris field, a long, wide scattering of everything that fell: plates, cups, boots, wine bottles, coal from the bunkers, light fittings, bathtubs, a child's doll, a leather bag, a ship's bell, all of it coming to rest gently in the pale sediment, all of it settling into silence. Breathe, let the image be still. She has arrived. The bow and the stern, separated by 600 meters of debris, resting in the cold dark at a depth of 3,800 meters, almost 4 kilometers below the surface of the Atlantic. And now, the ocean begins the long work of forgetting her. Let us talk for a moment about the place where she rests, because it is not an ordinary place. At 3,800 meters, the ocean is a world almost completely unlike the one above. The pressure is enormous, 380 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. Every square centimetre of the ship's hull is pressed upon by the weight of nearly 4 kilometres of water above it. It is the kind of pressure that would crush a human body instantly. It is the kind of pressure that slowly, over decades, deforms even solid steel. The temperature is just above freezing, 2 degrees Celsius, the same temperature almost exactly as the water the passengers died in at the surface, but down here the cold is eternal. It does not vary with the seasons, it does not rise with the sun. It is always this cold, everywhere, all the time. The darkness is absolute. No sunlight has ever reached this place. Not a single photon from the sky above penetrates this deep. The last trace of light fades somewhere around 1,000 meters, and the Titanic lies nearly 3 times that distance further down. She rests in a darkness older than the species that built her. The movement of the water is almost nothing. A slow current drifts through the area, the southern edge of the deep western boundary current, moving at perhaps 1 centimetre or 2 per second. Enough to carry fine particles across the wreck over long periods, enough to keep a gentle, constant downdrift of marine snow falling onto her decks, not enough to disturb her. The sediment around her is pale, a soft, fine grey-white mud, the accumulated remains of billions of tiny surface organisms fallen over millions of years to carpet the abyssal floor. When a submersible touches it, a cloud rises that takes many minutes to settle. When the Titanic struck it, she sank into it as into snow, and here, in this cold, dark, quiet place, she begins her second existence. Not as a ship, as a feature of the sea floor. Let your breathing slow. Let yourself settle into the stillness of that depth. There is something in the deep ocean that is almost sacred. The slowness of it, the quiet, the sense of time behaving differently, as if minutes at the surface become hours down here, and hours become years, and years become almost nothing at all. The Titanic rests now in that slower time. She does not know the world is continuing above her. She does not know that wars are being fought, that empires are rising and falling, that her story is being told and retold at dinner tables and in newspapers and eventually in films. None of that reaches her. The seasons pass above. The ocean freezes and thaws at the poles. Hurricanes tear across the surface of the Atlantic. Ships cross and recross the water where she went down, but down where she lies, nothing changes. The temperature stays the same. The pressure stays the same. The darkness stays the same. The slow current drifts, always, in the same gentle direction. Only one thing changes. Very slowly, life begins to colonize her. In the first years after her sinking, almost nothing lives on the Titanic. The deep ocean is sparse, food is scarce, populations are small. When a new structure arrives on the seafloor, any new structure, from a sunken ship to a whale carcass, it is a rare opportunity for the creatures of the abyss. But they are slow to find it, and slow to grow once they do. In the first years, the Titanic is almost unchanged. The paint still holds. The wood of her decks is still intact. The brass fittings still shine, faintly, or when touched by light, though no light reaches them. The china in her pantries is unbroken. The glass bottles in her wine cellars are sealed. She is, in those first years, a preserved ship, a frozen moment, the Edwardian world, sealed in cold, salt water, waiting. Then, slowly, the deep begins to work on her. The wood goes first. Deep-sea wood-boring mollusks, creatures like teredo worms, find the hull and begin to consume the teak decks, The mahogany paneling, the oak furniture. Over decades, the wood softens, disintegrates, becomes sediment. Then the softer metals, the lead pipes, the brass fittings. These corrode slowly in the cold, salt water, though much more slowly than they would at the surface. Then the steel. This takes much longer. Steel in deep, cold water does not rust in the ordinary way. Instead, bacteria begin to live on it, specific strains of iron-eating bacteria that consume the metal one molecule at a time, producing in return long formations of reddish-brown material that hang from the hull in curtains. These formations are called rusticles. They are not rust in the usual sense. They are living structures, colonies of bacteria glued together with the iron they have consumed, growing downward from every overhang on the ship like stalactites in a cave. Some are several meters long. They break off and fall slowly to join the sediment below. Then new rusticles grow in their place. It is the rusticles more than anything else that will eventually destroy the Titanic. They are consuming her, year by year, in very small amounts, and the estimate is that her steel is being eaten at a rate of perhaps 100 kilograms per day, which sounds like nothing compared to the size of her, but over enough time it adds up. Scientists now believe that in perhaps another 50 years, perhaps 100, the Titanic will no longer exist as a recognizable ship. Her hull will collapse into unrecognizable plates. Her decks will fall through onto the debris below. What remains will be a long mound of rust on the sea floor. No longer a ship, just a geological feature. But that is still decades away. For now, and for a little while longer, she is still recognizable. Still the Titanic. Breathe slowly. Let the years pass in your imagination. The ship is resting. The rusticles are growing. The sediment is falling quietly. It on her decks. A snowfall that has been continuous for more than a century now. A thin grey layer on every horizontal surface, covering the railings, filling the bathtubs, resting in the open staircase where the grand staircase once stood before the wood dissolved into the water. Deep-sea creatures drift through her, rat-tail fish, long, pale, slow-moving, ghost sharks, sea cucumbers crawling across the decks, pale sea anemones attached to the railings, waving their tentacles in the slow current. She has become a habitat, a small, dark, specialized ecosystem in the middle of a vast, abyssal plain. Life has found her. Life is using her. Life is, in its slow way, turning her back into the ocean. Above, the world continues. The First World War begins in 1914, 2 years after the sinking, and ends in 1918. Many of the survivors of the Titanic die in it. Many others of the wealthy first-class families lose sons, brothers, fortunes. The Second World War comes in 1939 and ends in 1945. Ships again cross the Atlantic in enormous numbers, carrying troops, carrying supplies, carrying refugees. Several of them are sunk not far from where the Titanic lies. Their own wrecks come to rest on the same seafloor, in the same cold, in the same dark. They keep her quiet company from a distance. The wireless technology she helped popularize becomes radio, becomes television, becomes satellite communication. The world grows smaller. The ocean no longer feels as vast. Through all of this, she rests. Her position is known, roughly, from the wireless messages sent during the sinking, but roughly only. The Atlantic is large. 3,800 meters is deep. The technology to reach such depths, to search systematically, to illuminate the sea floor with lights and cameras, the technology does not yet exist. For a long time, no one even tries to find her. She seems to a world that has lost her, entirely beyond reach. Let that feeling be with you for a moment. The deep ocean in the early 20th century is not just unexplored, it is almost unimaginable. Further from human experience than the surface of the moon, more mysterious than outer space, a place that no one had seen, no one had photographed, no one had described. And within that inaccessible place, lying quietly on the sea floor, was the most famous ship in the world, lost, known, untouchable. This begins to change in the 1960s and 1970s. Submersibles, small deep-diving vessels carrying 2 or 3 people, are developed for scientific research. The French submersible Archimede, the American submersible Alvin. These craft can reach the deep ocean, barely, slowly, but they can. In the 1980s, the combination of deep-diving submersibles and remote-operated camera vehicles, towed sleds with powerful lights and television cameras, makes systematic search of the deep sea floor possible for the first time. In 1985, a joint French-American expedition arrives in the North Atlantic. The leader of the American side is Robert Ballard. He is an oceanographer, a former naval officer, a man who has spent his career searching for things at the bottom of the ocean. He has a personal project he has been preparing for years to find the Titanic. But he also has a secret mission for the United States Navy. The Navy has 2 sunken nuclear submarines on the Atlantic Sea floor, the Thresher and the Scorpion. Both went down in the 1960s. The Navy wants to know the condition of the wrecks, particularly the condition of their nuclear reactors. They have hired Ballard to survey them. In exchange, if he has time left over at the end of the mission, he may use the equipment to look for the Titanic. This is not public at the time. It will only become public decades later, but it is the reason the Titanic is found in 1985 and not some other year. The reason the technology and the funding and the time all converge in the summer of that year, on one small patch of ocean south of Newfoundland. Ballard surveys the submarines first. He documents them carefully. He completes his obligations to the Navy. Then he has 12 days left. And a theory. From studying the submarine wrecks, he has noticed something. When a large object sinks, it does not fall straight down. It sheds debris as it descends, and that debris, being lighter, falls more slowly and more widely than the main hulk. The result is a long, trailing debris field on the sea floor, sometimes stretching for kilometers, pointing, like an arrow, toward the main wreck. The debris field is easier to find than the ship itself, because it is larger, because it is wider, because even a small piece of it caught on camera confirms the location. Ballard decides to search for the Titanic's debris field rather than for the ship directly. He deploys the Argo, a towed camera sled, or dragged slowly behind the research vessel at an altitude of perhaps 50 meters above the sea floor. Its cameras send continuous black and white video back to the ship. A team of scientists watches the video in shifts, around the clock, for anything unusual. For 8 days, the video shows only pale sediment, nothing else, an endless, flat plain. featureless, lit by the Argo's lights against absolute darkness beyond. Then, in the early hours of the morning of September 1st, 1985, at about 1 o'clock in the morning, with most of the crew sleeping, the scientists on watch see something. A circular shape, metallic, sitting on the sea floor, a boiler. The scientists call the cabin. They wake Ballard. He comes to the monitor room in a bathrobe. He watches the replay. He recognizes it immediately. The same pattern of boiler that he has seen in old photographs of the Titanic's boiler rooms. The Argo continues forward. More wreckage appears, plates, pipes, twisted steel, a trail leading somewhere. They have found her. Breathe slowly. Let the moment settle. 73 years of silence. And then, on a small monitor on a research ship, at 1 o'clock in the morning, a circular iron shape appears out of the dark. The Titanic has been found. The crew, when they realize what they are seeing, become very quiet. They had expected celebration. They had imagined champagne, shouting, embraces, but none of that happens. Instead, one by one, they go up on deck. They look out over the ocean. They are without having planned it. I standing nearly exactly where the lifeboats had drifted in the dark on the 15th of April 1912, almost 73 years before to the day. One of the scientists proposes a small ceremony, a short silence, a few words. Then they go quietly back below decks and continue the work. The Titanic is no longer lost, but she is still at rest. And Ballard decides after some reflection that she should remain at rest. He refuses to recover artifacts. He refuses to disturb the wreck. He believes, and he will say this publicly many times in the years that follow, that the Titanic is a grave. More than 1,500 people died with her. Many of their bodies over the decades have been consumed by the ocean. But the shoes and the life belts and the small personal items remain, scattered across the debris field like a quiet archaeology of lives. She should be left alone, photographed, studied, remembered, but not plundered, not broken up, not retrieved. Not everyone agrees with him. In the years after his discovery, other expeditions will come. Some will recover artifacts, some will cause damage to the wreck. A commercial salvage operation will eventually be authorized, and thousands of objects will be brought to the surface and displayed in traveling museum exhibits around the world. But Ballard himself never takes anything. He returns to the wreck in the years that follow to photograph it further. He leaves it as he found it, quiet, on the floor, where she belongs. Let your breathing be very slow now. We are near the end of this part. There is something restful in knowing that she was found. Not rescued. She could not be rescued, not restored. She could not be restored, simply seen. After 73 years, human eyes finally reached her again. A small light in the absolute dark. A camera moving slowly above her, crossing her forward well deck, passing over the space where the iceberg's chunks had fallen in 1912. Drifting along the bow, still pointed as if in motion slightly downward into the sediment. The image, when it first appeared on the monitors, was haunting. It remains haunting now, more than 40 years later, in every documentary and photograph and film that has used it. The bow of the Titanic, emerging from the dark, covered in rusticles, still unmistakably a ship. Still, somehow, the Titanic, after everything. She was still there, waiting quietly in the cold for someone to come back, Rest with her now, the story is almost finished. There is one more part, the gentlest part. What she is today, what lives on her, what will happen to her in the years to come, and the final descent into sleep. But that is for part 6. For now, let her be where she is, quiet, dark, resting on the soft grey sediment of the abyssal plain, in water that has not moved much in 100 years. And let yourself rest the same way, heavy, still, the night around you soft and deep, like water that does not move, your body settled, your breathing slow, nothing more to do tonight, nothing more to carry. The ship is where she belongs. You are where you belong, and the dark is kind to both of you. Breathe. Slowly. You are still here, still resting, and the ocean is still holding her. This is the last part of our story tonight. We are going to close it gently. We are going to leave the Titanic where she is, and we are going to leave you where you are, which is, I hope, already somewhere very close to sleep. There is no hurry in this last section, less than any of the others, less than the building of the ship, or the voyage, or the sinking or the finding of her. This part moves at the pace of marine snow, falling quietly through cold water, taking its time. Let us return to her one last time. It is now in our story, not 1912, not 1985. Now, the present day. She has been on the seafloor for more than 114 years. The bow section still sits nearly upright. The decks have collapsed in places. The promenade deck has begun to fold inward under its own weight. The crow's nest, where Frederick Fleet stood and saw the iceberg, has fallen off the foremast and lies on the deck below. But the shape of her is still there, still recognizable, still unmistakably a ship. The stern, 600 meters away, is harder to recognize. It was twisted and broken in the sinking. It hit the sea floor with enormous force. The stern plates have peeled outward. The decks have collapsed into layers. What you see now, looking at the stern, is a vast open wound of steel. The inside of the ship turned partly outward, rusticles hanging from every exposed edge, sediment filling every hollow. Between the two halves, the debris field. The field has been photographed, catalogued, mapped. There are maps of it now, careful, patient maps, showing where every visible object lies. A pair of leather boots, close together, as if they had been worn by someone, the body long since consumed, the leather preserved by the cold and the tannins. A bathtub upright on the sediment, a champagne bottle still corked, its label almost readable, a small porcelain cherub, once part of a first-class fireplace, fallen face up into the mud. These things are strange to look at, not sad, exactly, not frightening, just very still. The kind of stillness that comes when objects are outside of time, when no one is using them, moving them, touching them for a very long while. They are the ordinary belongings of an ordinary world, a world that, for one night in April of 1912, came to rest on a patch of sea floor 4 kilometers down, and has remained there, quietly, for longer now than the world it came from existed. Let yourself drift for a moment. Cow, let the images be soft. A boot on the sediment, a china plate, unbroken, a brass clock, stopped at some unknown hour, a ship's bell. These are not frightening objects, they are quiet objects. They have been here long enough that the ocean has accepted them. The sediment has settled around them. The sea creatures have learned to live among them. They belong here now, Life on the Titanic today is sparse but present. The rusticles grow, new ones every year. A forest of reddish-brown bacterial colonies draped over every beam, hanging from every overhang, slowly consuming the ship from the inside out. Pale sea anemones attach themselves to the railings. Their tentacles drift in the slow current, catching particles of marine snow as it falls from above. Deep-sea corals have grown on some of the more sheltered surfaces. Small, pale colonies, not the bright reef corals of the surface, but cold water corals, adapted to the dark and the pressure and the patience of life at 4 kilometers down. Rat-tail fish drift through the open spaces of the ship, long, pale, slow-moving, with small eyes and long tapering tails. They are the most common large fish at these depths. They are scavengers, mostly. They do not hurry. Occasionally, rarely, a larger visitor passes. A deep-sea shark, a grenadier, a squid with enormous pale eyes, a species of sea cucumber crawling slowly across the decks, leaving a faint trail in the sediment behind it, and always, falling from above, the snow. Marine snow is not snow in the ordinary sense. It is the slow, constant downdrift of organic matter from the surface waters, dead plankton, fragments of larger creatures, tiny particles of everything that lives and dies in the upper ocean. It falls for weeks to reach the sea floor. It drifts sideways in the slow currents. It accumulates grain by grain on every surface. The Titanic has been snowing on quietly for more than a century. Every deck is covered in a soft layer of accumulated marine snow. Every bathtub holds several centimeters of it. Every open staircase has filled over the decades with gently drifted sediment. She is being buried, very slowly, in a snow that never stops falling. Let that image be soft. It is a gentle image. A ship on the sea floor, under a constant slow snowfall, being slowly covered in a blanket of the ocean's own making. It does not feel like destruction. It feels like being tucked in. The ocean, which took her violently in 1912, she'd been treating her gently ever since. The first hours were cruel. The 100 years after have been kind. Somewhere near her from time to time, a whale falls. A whale fall is one of the most remarkable events in the deep ocean. When a great whale dies at the surface and sinks, its body eventually reaches the sea floor, often after many weeks of slow descent. And when it arrives, it brings in a single event an enormous concentration of food into a world that normally has very little. A whale fall feeds the deep for decades. First come the hagfish and the sharks, the rat-tails and the large scavengers. They strip the flesh from the bones. This lasts for months, sometimes years. Then come the smaller scavengers, crustaceans, worms. They consume what remains of the soft tissue. This can last another few years. Or then come the specialists, creatures that live only on whale bones, worms that bore into the skeleton, bacterial mats that digest the fats still inside. This stage can last for decades. An entire small ecosystem, species that exist nowhere else, forms on a single whale skeleton and lives there for as long as the bones last. There are whale falls somewhere on the seafloor near the Titanic, not close enough to see, but present. Each one a small island of life in the vast, sparse dark. Each one lasting longer than many countries have existed. Each one part of the slow economy of the deep ocean, where death, over decades, becomes life for creatures that do not eat anything else. The Titanic herself is, in a small way, something like a whale fall, a vast structure that arrived suddenly on the deep sea floor, bringing with it materials, wood, leather, coal, iron, that the creatures of the abyss do not normally encounter. Some of those creatures have adapted. The iron-eating bacteria that build the rusticles had to come from somewhere. They found the Titanic. They adapted to her steel. They have been living on her and through her ever since. Even in sinking, she gave life. Not the lives she was built to protect. Those were lost. But other lives, small, slow, patient lives deep in the dark, have grown on her over a century. The ocean wastes nothing, not even her. Breathe slowly. Your body is heavy now. We are nearly at the end. Let the last images pass through you gently. What happens to her next? The estimates vary. Some scientists believe she will collapse entirely within 50 years. Others say 100. The others, looking at how much of the original structure remains, suggest she may last longer still. But all of them agree on the direction. The rusticles are winning. The bacteria are slowly consuming the steel. The decks are weakening. The supports are failing. At some point, not soon but someday, the major structures will collapse under their own weight. The crow's nest is already gone. The gymnasium has fallen. The officers' quarters are disintegrating. The bridge, where Captain Smith stood, has partially collapsed. In another century, she may be nothing but a long, low mound on the sea floor. A geological feature, a slight irregularity in the sediment, indistinguishable to the casual observer from the natural shapes of the deep. This is not a sad ending. It is, in its way, the kindest possible ending. She will not be broken up by salvages. She will not be exhibited piece by piece. She will not be turned into artifacts. She will simply, slowly, over a very long time, return to the ocean that took her, become sediment, become seabed, become part of the slow, quiet geology of the deep Atlantic, which is what all of us become eventually in one way or another. Let your eyes close a little more. Let your body sink into whatever is holding it. The Titanic is far below. 4 kilometers of cold, salt water between her and the sky, the slow current drifting past her, the marine snow falling forever onto her quiet decks, the rusticles growing down from her beams, the pale fish moving through the spaces where once there were corridors, dining saloons, cabins full of sleeping passengers. She is at rest, in the cold, in the dark, in the silence, exactly where the ocean decided she would be, and all the people who were lost with her, wherever they are, whether still in the debris field as small leathers and cottons, or long since gone into the sediment of the sea floor. They are quiet now. They have been quiet for longer than any of them lived. Their quiet is deep. It has settled into the place where they rest. They are part of the ocean now, the same ocean that continues to be above them, the great cold blue body of water that covers most of the earth. The same ocean that has been, for as long as there has been life, the largest habitat on the planet. The same ocean that every night thousands of people drift to sleep beside, on coasts, on islands, on ships, in beds that face the sound of its waves. The Titanic is part of the ocean. The ocean holds her. The ocean knows where she is. The ocean, which keeps its secrets, is keeping hers. Breathe very slowly and let go. This is the end of the story, not a dramatic end, not a final note, just the quiet closing of something that was being held carefully for a while and is now being set down. The Titanic is where she belongs. You are where you belong. The night is deep around you. Your body is heavy. Your breathing has slowed to the long, even rhythm that comes just before sleep. If it has not already carried you there, there is nothing more to be done tonight. No more voyages, no more icebergs, no more boats in the cold water, no more decks slowly tilting toward the sea. No more stars looking down at a flat black ocean on a Sunday night in April. All of that is far away now, more than 100 years away. Thousands of kilometers away, 4 kilometers beneath the surface, you will never have to see. And you are here, warm, safe, still. The ocean is not going anywhere tonight. The Titanic is not going anywhere tonight. The stars above the Atlantic, the same stars that watched her go down, are still there. They will be there tomorrow and the night after and 1,000 years from now. They are not asking anything of you. They do not need to be looked at. They simply exist, quietly, as they always have. Let them be. Let her be. Let yourself be. One more slow breath in and out. Another. You are drifting now, the way the marine snow drifts, the way the slow current drifts, the way everything in the deep ocean moves, without hurry, without purpose, without needing to arrive anywhere. You have been carried tonight. Through a long story, you have travelled with a ship from her first drawings in Belfast to her last resting place on the abyssal plain. You have watched her rise and cross the ocean and fall and settle into the cold. You have let her be, in each of those moments, exactly what she was. You have been patient with her. Now be patient with yourself. Let sleep come in its own time. Let it find you the way the Argo's lights found her, quietly, unexpectedly, out of a very long dark. You do not need to reach for it. It is already coming. The deep ocean holds its silence. The Titanic rests. The snow falls. The rusticles grow a little more each year. And somewhere, very close to where you are now, sleep is taking you in the same quiet way the ocean took her, softly, completely, without asking anything of you. Good night. Rest well. The ocean will keep her safe tonight, and you are safe too. Follow Unseen Ocean History for more deep ocean mysteries.